Hello, Hamish here from Mortgages Online, and I've got Hamish Firth with me from Mount Hobson Group. Hamish and Hamish, we're talking about stuff Hamish has a lot to do with, which is planning, getting resource consents, building consents from, and you work on the client side, right? Not the council side.
Yep.
Never on the council, sometimes.
Occasionally.
Occasionally on the council. But so the key thing we're going to talk about is how many can you put up? You're developing a site. How many should you put on there? How do you go about comparing it? What's happening in the market? Are we going to see more intensification? And I guess I could ramble on about rambling on, but I'll let you have a say, Hamish. What do you think?
Yeah, look, hey, the rules are changing, and we're now almost in April, and in August the rules, in Auckland especially, but some of the other big centres, your Taurangas, your Wellingtons, Christchurches, Rotorua, that intensification is going to become easier. So as a permitted activity, you're going to have 3 units per site. So every site that's got services, that's urban, in short, you can put three units on, irrelevant of the site size. So, that's just the beginning.
Wow. So I guess the key thing that I sometimes see is that how do you compare whether it's worthwhile doing? How do you compare whether you should do 3 or 6 or 4? Because that's another thing. You'll be able to do 3, but coming to someone like yourself, you might discover, hey, you can actually do more, right?
Yeah, and I suppose planning is now less of a constraint. So if you wanted to do 5 or 6, where before you might have only been allowed to do 3, then that's going to be also a distinct possibility. And I think it's probably less to do with the planning or the resource consent, and more to do with the cost of development and the return. And I suppose as long as your site's got services and there's no title constraints, then the number of units is not going to be as affected by zoning as it used to be.
Yeah, so let's have a think about this, because there's 2 components. If you are comparing 2 different kinds of projects out the back of your house, there's a cost to build, right? And then, of course, how much will it cost you, and then the end value, right? The 2 components really is the cash flow and the value, right? So if you look at the value alone, one of the key mistakes I see a lot is that the cost to build is there, but you also need to include the starting cost. And the starting cost for me, I always think, has to be the start value. So what is it worth today? Yes. Then the cost to build, then you'll get your end value, right? So there you'll be able to compare whether you do 3, 4 or 5 different routes that you go down.
And what you might find is that 6 is a good idea, but you can't, either you don't want to or you can't quite financially manage that right now. Yep. So I suppose what we do have is the ability in consenting to be able to stage things. So we might do 2 lots of 3, where the units will be, you build 3 units, you'll get lateral bedded down, and then maybe in a couple of years after that you'll build another 3 units.
Okay, so that's a really good point. So you can actually stage the consent. And what about if you stage a consent? Would you be able to get the separate titles?
Oh, absolutely. So you would ensure that council knew of your intentions. You might lodge that as a 6-unit consent to be built and consented and subdivided in 2 stages, and your consent will come out like that. So it'll have a series of conditions which allow for 3 titles to come out, leaving you a parent title or a title at the end where you could do further 3 units. Now, there's going to be some additional upfront costs with regards to your consenting, and I would suggest that instead of having to rip a driveway up, you'd put all the services in for all 6, and you'd leave the 3 that you haven't built capped at the end. So staging of consents is something that I think will become more popular as people understand that they've got every single site has got development potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, any other aspects you think that people should... What's a good starting point? Obviously, coming to a funder, I'll tell you probably, hey, it's easier to fund 3 at a time than to fund 7. Okay, that's just a given. Come to talk to me. Come to talk to someone like yourself.
Yeah, look, we can do a quick title check. We can do a very quick zoning and services check, and really come back to you and say, well, you could probably do up to 6, and then the choice is yours.
Yeah.
And then probably if it's fundable if it's consentable, the next stage is probably getting a draft set of plans done, real basic plans, so that you can start to feel how that's going to fit on a site, and what the constraints are going to be and what the issues might be.
And timing wise, so at the moment, and again this is time specific as of right now, what are you seeing out there? So I come up to you and I say, right, Hamish, I love it, I want to do 3 out the back. How quickly are we building? Because there's a resource consent and there's a building consent, am I right?
Yeah, and sometimes there's an engineering approval which is for drainage in the ground, which is, it might be extending the services, the public services. So look, we often say it can be a year to 15 months to get your bits of paper. Right. So if you came to us now and wanted to build 3 units on a site, we haven't started, so we've got to get a survey plan and we've got to get all those bits of paper together.
Yep.
You're probably not turning earth for at least 15 months.
Right, 15 months. Okay, and obviously coming to someone like myself for the funding, our approval doesn't last that long, so it's like, but we can give you a fairly good indication of, yes, very likely you've got a bit of fat in there just in case rules change, or it's borderline, take the punt if you want, that kind of thing.
Yeah, whether you're building 1 or 3, you still need to get paperwork. And look, councils are very busy right now, consultants are very busy, architects are very busy. So those times are stretched more than the average time.
Okay, and obviously we're not going to get into how long the build takes, but let's face it, developers are fairly brave people.
Yeah, they take risk. We work with a lot of developers, and sometimes I wonder how they sleep at night. Not because they're doing things wrong, but because of the various pulls and the stresses that are on them. So it's not a game for the light-hearted or the faint-hearted.
And I think the key thing there is if you are someone who's doing a project out the back and your intention is to hold it, you probably can be a little bit more patient with the whole process. There aren't the same kind of cost pressures maybe going on.
Well, you're building an asset for life, aren't you? That if you've got 2 or 3 rentals in your backyard, that's going to help service you for your retirement. So whether it takes an extra year or an extra 2 years to get it all bedded in, you've built yourself an asset.
Yeah, and I think, okay. Well, hey, look, thanks for that, Hamish. I think that's been insightful. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully that has been of some benefit. Yeah, thanks for coming in.
No problem.